All right. Welcome to the first episode of the One Time podcast. I'm Tanya, and we have our first guest here.
And for the one and only time I shall be on the show, James Tiberius Anderson.
Yes.
Yeah, the one and only.
Yep, the one and only.
Some of you might not have heard of me just yet, but trust me, in the future you will. In the next couple of episodes, Tanya's still probably going to be talking about me a lot. So you'll get to know me pretty well.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I'm just gonna jump in here with a little voiceover because this first episode is a little bit of a shit show due to the lack of planning on my part. There were a lot of things I wanted to say that kind of flew over my head while I was recording this with James, so I'm gonna do that now. And I also might jump in here and there later on in the episode to add some things too. So the One Time podcast is meant to be like my little audio diary, because when I'm 60, I want to be able to look back and be like, hey, one time I did some cool things. Or in case I die early, and my kids or my future kids don't know my life story, they can also just listen to this and get to know me a little bit more. Hopefully that doesn't need to happen. And yeah, this is also for my friends and family, who I don't always get the chance to catch up with properly. This is here for you guys. So yeah, every episode will feature a guest. They'll usually be people I meet while I am traveling. They're all very special to me. So I want to be able to remember my conversations with them, and I just thought this would be a good idea to do that. So I hope you enjoy the rest of our little ramble. So because this is the first episode, I was thinking we could talk about our firsts of various things.
I see.
So for example, our first season as snowboard instructors.
Oh yeah, so I suppose we should probably give people a little bit of background on what we were doing these last few months.
Yes. We went to Japan to be snowboard instructors.
Well, that kind of sums it up pretty well, right?
Yes.
That's where me and Tanya first met.
Yeah.
We were training to be snowboard instructors. So we went with this company called EA Snow Sports.
Mm-hmm.
And and you pay for like training, and then they hook you up with a job as well. So It's kind of like, it's pretty handy if you want to get into the industry.
But it costs 10 grand.
Yeah, it costs a fair chunk of change.
So did you have any expectations going into it? Was your expectation different from the reality of it all?
No, I think the expectation was pretty much met. In fact, it was exceeded. I thought I wasn't going to have as much fun, because it was kind of like you kind of made like a second little family, especially in like the place that we were working. We were like living in a house with like 10 other instructors, and it was like our own personal thing. Each of us had our own room and stuff. It was a pretty good gig, but like you just get to know everyone really well. And like ski and snowboard instructors tend to be kind of adventurous and nice people by nature, like sociable and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I didn't really expect, like feeling like, oh, I have a little family there. And to expand on that a little more, when I first met everyone in Japan, I was like, oh God, I'm not gonna get along with anyone here. Some of them look like massive weebs. And I was like, I'm way too cool for these losers. Most of the guys were just freakishly tall for some reason, and that really intimidated me at first, and I just thought like this was just not the usual crowd I would hang out with. But like James said, we all have this one thing in common, which is that desire for adventure. So, although we're all very different on the outside, I think at our core, we're all the type of people who like to push ourselves to experience new things, and we're all here for more or less the same reason, and that's to explore what else life has to offer. So, yeah, I would actually say I was really surprised that I ended up just loving all the different personalities over here. Um, And I think just being here would have been a big decision for all of us. I think it's difficult to, make that first move where you step outside your home where you feel safe, or, to quit a full-time job where you get a lot of stability from. It's quite scary to step outside that box, especially when you're doing something unconventional and it might not always go to plan. Um, and I think society is very structured in the sense that I feel like we all have this we have this image of like what a successful life looks like, and that's having a good stable career or investing in a home and starting a family, etc. And all these things aren't bad, but I think for me at some point I started to question it all. Um, because like for me before I left, I felt like I had my whole life planned like step by step in my head since I was a teenager, and that was to find like a decent man to be my husband, and then getting a somewhat stable career, living in a nice suburb in Sydney, and then having two kids, um, and I felt like the closer I was getting to those things, the more trapped I felt, and I was kind of like, shit, is this it? And when I hit 25, I felt like all those things could be happening very soon. And I realized that I don't think I would be happy starting that stage in my life until I feel like I've really lived it to the fullest. And for me, that means, going on crazy adventures or exploring the world and different people. And through these experiences, I want to be able to gain a broader perspective on all that life has to offer. And I still really want to eventually find someone to share my life with and have kids and all that jazz, but before committing to something permanent, I want to feel like I got to step outside my box and seeing what else was out there. And in that sense, just by doing one ski season in Hakuba, I believe has like changed my life, because I got to meet all these different people and witness how differently everyone chooses to live their life. Um, for example, some people do back-to-back seasons. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. Or people do one season and have a summer job and then come back to it. Um, yeah, and I was just like, that's so cool. Like that's a really cool lifestyle. But it doesn't even just have to be about your job or career. It could even be just getting to know different types of relationships, like polygamy, for example, or it could just be something as simple as having a vegan friend. Like, I don't have any vegan friends back in Australia, which is crazy. Um, and like even that, like I feel like my diet has changed quite a bit. Um, and I think what I loved the most about being in Hakuba with everyone was just the fact that I felt like we were all trying to find a way to live a life that truly makes us happy. Um, and I think that really made just being there feel so magical. Throughout the season, I would always say this to my friend Julia, that I have never been this happy before in my life. And I would say it every few days, and she would also say it to me. because I feel like we've just never felt this content in life before. And when you're surrounded by the most loving people and when you're doing something that you really love, there's just like nothing more magical than that. And every day I feel so grateful that I did step outside my box and got to meet just such a cool variety of people. Because with every new experience and every new person you meet, you get a new perspective on the world. And every day I just feel like I'm learning so much. Quite
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, I got a lot of extras added on. Like, I met you. That was a big
Yeah.
plus for me.
Actually, that was one thing I was kind of expecting to meet someone.
Oh, you were expecting that?
Yeah, of course.
A bit confident of you?
Yeah, I mean, everywhere I go, just,
Oh, I see.
why were you not?
Well, I know I thought I'd meet someone like, casually, in Japan. Maybe a Japanese girl, who knows, because I'm a big weeb.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect to get into a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly not as quickly as it happened.
Yes. Well, I was also imagining just something casual, but I think for you, like, you kind of got thrown into the deep end with this relationship because, well, like, it started off casual, right? But
it didn't even, though.
It didn't even? Oh, in my head it was, because we didn't have any, like, labels or anything.
Oh, yeah. You didn't have labels on it, but
to be honest, you didn't need to.
Yeah.
But, I mean, for you, like, we didn't even go on any dates before jumping straight into basically living and working together, which is, like, a great deal of time.
Yeah, it's, like, definitely the most amount of time I've ever spent with one person. But I think, like, I kind of knew you. Like, I had already had my first impression of you, like, during our time in Saku when we were doing the training, the instructor training and stuff. And I'd seen, like, talk to you, not a lot, but I talked to you a little bit in Japan and stuff like that. So I didn't really need kind of like those dates to kind of know I wanted to kind of be with you. But I will admit, for me, it was tough at the beginning because it was just like a lot of time.
Yeah.
I felt like there wasn't a lot of like room, if you know what I mean. And the fact our rooms were like connected, and you would just waltz into my room whenever you'd want, was a bit jarring at first.
It was a bit jarring.
It was, yeah. Well, don't get me wrong, I was excited about it, but I was kind of like, oh God, I need my own space.
Yeah. Did you feel like you got enough of that?
Yeah, over the season. Yeah, but still, it was kind of like, it was tough, I guess, to, just sleep in the same bed with someone, go to work with them, eat with them every day, pretty much. Hang out with them at parties, and like our friend group were the same when we were in there. It took a lot of getting used to, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think like that's probably the most time you spent with a partner as well, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely, like, straight off the bat as well. Like, I know you knew me, like, when we were training and stuff, but you didn't really know me. And also, we couldn't really talk to each other comfortably.
We were super awkward with each other.
Yeah, so it wasn't like, it was just like, I felt like we were only together because of our circumstance rather than like we wanted to be with each other or like to be spending that much time with each other,
Hey, you didn't want to spend that much time with me?
No, I did, but I'm saying I'm saying like
that's the only reason we spent that much time together, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So for example, like I actually want to spend more like one-on-one time with you, like especially at the beginning to actually get to know you, but like I guess during work or like even at parties and stuff, you don't have, that's not a place for you to connect like one-on-one.
Yeah.
Right. And I think like at the beginning I found that super difficult, and it actually made me feel really lonely because like each time he went out, and I'm like, oh, why didn't you want to spend time with just me? Like,
Well, there was a lot of times that I started going out like a lot less when we got together.
yeah. I guess like afterwards.
Like, when did you actually feel that you began to know me then? If you didn't feel that way at the beginning.
I feel like I started getting to actually know you when we were in Bali.
Bali? That was like 4 or 5 months after you met me.
Yeah, like I
Oh my God.
okay,
This changes everything.
this changed. No, it was the first time I would say I felt comfortable, like completely comfortable with you, because I think that's the other thing. Like when we were in Japan, I think the way I framed the relationship was very different to you, right? Because well, first we've had very different experiences.
Oh yeah, just a little bit of context. I've never, like, this is the first relationship I've ever been in at like age 24. That's been longer than 2 weeks. Yep. And Tanya's the first person I've ever said I love you to.
Oh.
You know, so there's like, it's a lot of firsts for me. Theme of the episode, really hammering that home.
Yes.
But yeah, it's so. I guess our understanding of relationships was very different, at least at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think even now as well.
Yeah. Yes, I feel like even throughout the season, I remember like if anyone called you my boyfriend or anything like of that sort, I'll be like
Triggered.
Yeah, I'll actually correct them because I'm like, no, this is not. This is not a relationship.
I didn't know you were so adverse to the thought.
Yeah, because I guess I didn't really want it to be anything more than this little bubble I had in my head.
A little casual thing.
Yes, like I didn't want it to be more than that because to me that's quite scary.
Yeah. But you couldn't help yourself.
No, help myself. I think the way I treated it was also very, very different to how I've treated my past relationships where there's no... I think the way I treated people in my past relationships, I would treat them as if, like, oh, there's a possibility that this person's going to be with me for the rest of my life. But with you, I felt like there was nothing I needed to change or do or, like, have expectations of because, oh, this is going to be, like, 6 months at most. And I guess I didn't want to, like, invest myself.
Yeah. I remember one thing that you said to me that kind of stuck with me, that kind of, like, encompassed the relationship, I think, is, like, you see this relationship as a dream.
Yes.
And at the time, I took that in a pretty negative way.
Yeah.
You know, like, the love that we felt for each other wasn't really real.
Yeah.
Or you didn't see it that way. But I think, well, do you want to say what you meant by that?
Well, I meant it as in, like, we're in this, like, La La Land fantasy where I think we didn't have to consider any, like, real world problems or issues, or even, like, issues I had with you, I wouldn't really bring up because, like, again, it's just like, oh, there's no need to, like, raise conflict and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, like, I actually take all that back. Because I think after we had that conversation, I guess I'm like, oh, as much as I don't want it to be real, it still is.
Yeah.
And I think the main difference is just knowing that this will end in 6 months versus not knowing.
Not knowing when it will
Yeah,
end.
but the thing is, like, you still experience all the same things.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, because knowing when something will end, like, that was what was changing the way I was thinking. But I think in the end, it doesn't really matter because, like, everything is still real.
Well, I'm super glad that we had that conversation as well, because I felt that, like, you talking about us talking about some of the problems or issues that we were kind of putting off talking about has kind of really helped me kind of, I don't know, be more considerate and, like, see another person's point of view a bit more. as well. And I think that's a useful skill to kind of have going into the future with like future relationships and friendships as well. So I'm like, oh no, I wanted not to be bothering you when, you know, I'm bothering you, if you know what I mean.
You wanted to not be bothering me.
I wanted, yeah, I never.
What does that mean?
So the other way, like, don't want you to hold back issues.
Oh, right, yeah.
If you have them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then it kind of like festers and gets annoying and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. But I think there are like little things that I think I thought I could bring up, and it's like easily resolved. But I think there are like some bigger issues, like the other one I brought up where it caused like a lot more conflict.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you brought it up though.
And this particular conflict I was talking about was the worst one we've had, because I think we weren't talking to each other properly for like 2 or 3 days. And on one of those days, we had a night out with our friends. But I was just so sad and dramatic about the whole thing, because, yeah, it was just really hard because it felt like there was no way to fix it. And what made it even more frustrating was that we literally only had less than 2 weeks with each other before we had to say goodbye. And in the moment, I really regretted bringing that conflict up, because I just thought, well, we didn't need to have this argument. We could have been fine. And I would much rather spend it having just like a good time. And when you only have such a short time left with someone, you feel a lot of pressure to make the most out of every moment, you know, like you want every moment to be great and amazing. But sometimes you need to go through the hard stuff if you want to experience the good stuff. So in the end, I think we were both really glad that we had that conflict and ended up being able to talk it through, because once we did, we were able to understand each other a lot better, and we got a lot closer because of it. And if anything, it made me fall in love with James even more.
We each give like a couple of tips, like going back to like first time instructors. Like if there's anything that's like any advice that we have, or you know, any tips or tricks or warnings for like your first season.
Warnings?
Yeah.
Okay, let me think.
Well, I'll go first.
Okay.
So what I found, I was like full of enthusiasm and like giving it 110% at like the very beginning of the season. But towards the end of the season, I had like lost all my motivation and kind of like my desire to like be good at teaching.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was due to kind of giving it 110% for so many days at the beginning. Because like there was a period of like, I think it was like 35 days where we didn't get a break.
Yeah.
We were working every day, no days off during the busy period. And that's like really tiring. So I think if I was to do it again, I would kind of like conserve my energy a little bit more. You know, make sure that you're giving your lessons to an acceptable level. But you don't need to go above and beyond for every person for them to have a good time.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because I felt like at the beginning I was like I would try to act overly happy, like in my lessons, and make it like super fun. And like, yeah, towards the end, sometimes I would just stand there and not even
just
smile.
Scowl. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're forcing happiness, it means like you're taking happiness away from the rest of your life. You know, it can be too much.
Emotionally draining.
Yeah.
To be encouraging, I think. Because sometimes you're like, God, you're hopeless. But you have to pretend like, no, there's hope.
Yeah, but you got to remember that like also everyone will eventually can learn it, right? You know, did you have
No.
someone that
Yes.
just never learned it at all,
Yes. Or
and you
like,
don't think that you could ever teach them
yes,
to be
because
good?
it's like, especially if they don't want to, because some people come to you being like they don't want to be there.
Oh
And
yeah,
they're just there
it's
because
usually because their
yeah.
boyfriends want to go off
Yeah.
or girlfriends want to go off and do really hard slopes,
Yeah.
and they're really bad,
Yeah.
so they get told to do lessons and they don't really want to be there.
Yeah, and like some kids as well, they also just get thrown in there, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
I don't think kids can learn, but I think if you give me like 3 full days with any person, I could get them turning. Anyone.
Yeah.
If I have about 3 full days one on one.
That's a lot of time. But...
It is a lot of time, but I'm thinking it's just kind of like, oh no, what got me through some of the harder lessons was kind of like just like saying to myself that people can do it. They just need more time.
Wow. Yeah, that's not what I thought. Sometimes I think I would just feel like, God, this guy's hopeless. He shouldn't be snowboarding. Like, but it's true. Like, it's just not for everyone, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I had this little kid, and he was just never seen anyone that uncoordinated before. Like, he had one foot strapped in, and he just could not, for the life of him, stand up. Even if I tried to help him, he was quite a big kid, but he just couldn't stand up. And like even going down, it's like if I just let go a little bit, he'd be like, no. And he was much happier to just run around in the snow, you know.
Oh, I remember seeing you.
Yeah. I'm just snowboarding down with his brother, and he's chasing us from behind.
Off his snowboard, like.
Yeah, and I was just holding his snowboard the whole time, but it was just like he was just miserable on the board, and like, you know, if someone hates it, you can't force them.
But like we went through, it was very interesting to see that every instructor like has a different teaching style.
Yeah.
And like you find your style pretty quickly, I think, when you start doing lessons.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, you could even see it when we were training and doing our like little mock.
Yeah, you do like little mock lessons while you're training you're getting like 5 days training before the exam starts. And they do a lot of mock lessons. The training's actually super good. It gets you prepared. Like, if you take the training seriously, I think most people will pass the level 1 for sure.
Okay, so James is making our level 1 exam sound like it was a breeze, but I'm not exaggerating when I say that I feel like it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do my whole life. And that might be because I've never really snowboarded before. Like, I've tried it for a few days, but I basically did not know how to snowboard, and everyone else did. And James was the other beginner, but he's also done a little more than me. So I think throughout the whole exam, everyone was kind of getting on okay, except for me. And that was super stressful because I invested 10 grand on this, and you know, basically if you fail, you're going to miss out on the whole experience because then you can't instruct. And I usually don't give a crap about exams at all, but oh man, this exam was more stressful than the HSC for me. And the other huge battle I had in my head was accepting that I was the worst snowboarder in the group. I would watch everyone else turning, riding switch and doing box slides like it was nothing. But for me, I was learning it all for the first time, and to have to learn things under a time pressure really took the fun out of it for me. And for those of you who know me, I'm a pretty cocky person. Like, I'm way too overconfident and arrogant about myself. Especially when it comes to sports like skateboarding or bouldering. Like, I like being better than everyone else, and just being in that environment where I can't brag about being the best, that was a really hard pill for me to swallow, and it really destroyed my confidence. And I was just so desperate to catch up to everyone, that I would just keep trying, and I would fall on my ass so much that like eventually I remember it being so painful to even like walk up the stairs, or like if I was sleeping I would always wake up, as if I accidentally laid on my back I would wake up from the pain. And just looking back, the whole training, like it was a really humbling experience, because I came into it thinking that I was super fit, that this would be super easy. But the thing is, nothing is easy, and um, it's honestly the most physically demanding job I've ever done. And yeah, like my body couldn't really handle it. Like we were snowboarding more than we would be walking, basically. And my knees got destroyed throughout the season. I could barely walk up or down the stairs, and a lot of the times James had to carry me and just like massage my legs, which I'm super grateful for, because yeah, I was struggling so much physically and mentally as well. Um, I remember there was a time when I broke down in tears after a lesson. And this was a lesson with the friends. It was meant to be quite fun, but I just broke down after, because I just felt like a cripple. Like I wasn't able to enjoy being in my body because I was always in pain. And it's kind of crazy how easy it is to forget how tough things were, because now that I'm fine, it's not even how I remember it. I just remember it as the most amazing time, but yeah, there were some really tough moments. And yeah, just being a snowboard instructor was really hard work, but that's also what made everything feel so amazing, because of how rewarding it was. And I'm actually really proud that I got through it, especially starting off as the least experienced. Ended up passing my level 1 and my level 2 exam, which is a 60% pass rate. Um, yeah, that level 2 exam was something I didn't stress about, because I was almost certain that I was going to fail, because I had knee problems and I had a UTI throughout most of it, and I was feeling ill. But somehow I managed. And now that the season is over, I realize that snowboarding has changed my life. I think it's not often that you get to do a sport every single day for, I don't know, like 6 to 8 hours. And when you do that sport every single day, like you just really feel it in your body, and you notice like all the little changes and the improvements you make. And like you just really get to know the sport as if it was like a person almost. Well, that's how I see it anyway. And I just want to get to know it, or snowboarding, more and more, and learn more and more. Um, yeah, you end up forming this relationship with the sport. It's just a whole other world on its own, and I just think about it so often, and I honestly can't imagine my winters without it anymore.
But anyway, yeah, you could see like everyone's different kind of teaching styles coming out. What was your one, Tanya?
Fun.
Yeah, Tanya likes making the lessons as fun as possible.
Yeah, and enjoyable.
And enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always watched her going down, because I looked at you a lot on the slopes. And all your students always had like big smiles on their faces, and they seemed to be having a great time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was. I mean, like you. Nah, sometimes I hated having fun. That's what it looked like. But inside, I'm like, this is so lame.
Yeah. But my teaching style was a bit different.
Yes, it's very strict.
Yeah.
And structured.
I had a motto, and I would tell this to the students as well.
Would you really?
Yeah, I would.
What would you say?
I'd say, so this is a strictly no fun allowed zone. Only learning.
Only learning.
Yeah, because learning is fun. So
You should actually say that to them.
yeah, I would, yeah.
I'm
And
sure
they would
have fun.
laugh.
Yeah, of course.
They would
it's
laugh.
funny.
So that's a little bit of fun, you know,
Yeah,
and kind
that
of
is
breaking
fun.
expectations.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
no, I would. Yeah, you're. It's all about learning. There's not a lot of chill time. No, you're gonna learn how to do it, and you're gonna feel proud of yourself, and that's
Yeah.
why it's gonna be fun.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that's why they took me off kid lessons pretty quickly.
because kids they don't respond to that.
No, they don't.
But I think adults would.
Yeah, adults.
Yeah.
I think the adults want to learn, but the kids, they just want to have fun and just play around in the snow. And yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm so glad they took me off kids lessons, man.
Yeah, that was the other
so
thing.
much better.
I loved kids lessons at the beginning, and towards the end, I would dread it so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's like I felt like what I liked about the job as well was meeting new people and talking to them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I felt like it's sometimes just like, oh, you're hanging out, you're being paid to hang with someone and you're teaching them on the side.
Yeah.
Which again, I think it's still quite different to yours because yours still, it feels like more of a lesson. But
I think there's like a little bit more of a gap between me and the student in terms of kind of connection.
Yes, yeah. So I think I usually like try to connect with the student on like that personal level. Yeah, just treating them as like a mate.
Me. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Oh yeah, I wanted to come back to something we were talking about before because I just remembered. It was when I said, the moment I started feeling comfortable with you was when we were in Bali.
Shock and horror.
Shock and horror. Yeah, because I think even before then, because I remember like you know that day we're about to leave Hakuba, and I was feeling so anxious and sad. Like I didn't feel like I could come to you for that.
Wow.
And I guess I would.
That makes me feel great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did eventually, but I think throughout the whole day I was more just crying alone in my room.
Yeah, you did a lot of that.
Yeah, I guess I think back then, I think a part of treating our relationship like as a dream, I felt like I couldn't bring up
Sadness.
Yeah, sadness a bit because yeah, it would feel like a bit much.
Yeah. But it was like, I suppose during those kind of times where you would like cry alone in your room, I don't know, that was kind of, I felt very kind of lost in those situations. Because I didn't really know why you would be sad. I would assume that it would be because I did something wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you wouldn't talk to me about it. But then I just be like, over time, I begin to understand that it was just kind of your way of dealing with things a little bit.
Yeah, like I need time to be sad before I'm happy again.
I think we approach stuff, that kind of stuff very differently.
Very differently. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that all started to change in Bali because spending 3 weeks alone together. I feel like that was also very different to like spending that season together because we're like alone, right? And
it was like even more kind of intense than it was.
More, way more intense because you were the only person I could turn to.
Yeah, and the fact that you were miserable during those 3 weeks was like kind of helped with that, I think.
Yeah, which is really weird because like I've actually never spent that long with one person before.
What?
Yeah.
A first time for you?
Yes, that was a first time for me. Like,
oh my God,
going on a trip for 3 weeks with my partner. Like, I think the longest I've done is probably 1 week, and even then I would feel miserable at the end of it because I'm like, God, that's too much time spent with one person.
I see.
But with you, it was actually great.
Yeah, I really had a great time, even though like loads of things went wrong.
Yeah, loads of things went wrong, but you know, it's like through adversity.
Yeah.
We came out better people.
We did. I mean, that first 3 weeks in Bali were like a bit of a mess. Like I really enjoyed them, but like when we got to the airport in Japan, we didn't realize that we had to have a
Book
flight
return
booked,
flight,
a return
yeah.
flight booked out. So it was like 5 minutes till check-in closed, and we had to like book 2 flights. And Tanya had no idea where she was going, so she was just staring at her phone, doing
Yeah, I was
nothing. And I was like, you
frozen.
gotta book something.
I don't know, James, just do it for me.
Yeah, so I ended up booking. So that's why Tanya's in Ireland right now, is because she couldn't decide where
Where
she
I was
wanted to go,
going.
and I was just like, okay, somewhere in Europe. She was like, just book a flight to Ireland with you, and I was like, okay, €700 down the drain for each of us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It actually worked out really well. You know?
it did. Well, yeah, I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah.
No, it's super nice.
Yeah.
We went to the Gili
Yeah.
Islands.
Mhm.
Well, I remember you saying like multiple times that this has been like the worst place you've ever been to.
It's the worst place I've ever been to.
Yeah, because we were in like a wooden shack and the AC was like not working, so it was pretty hot. There was like no escape from the heat and the humidity.
Yeah, I think that's what really annoyed me. But looking back now, I guess I was very dramatic.
You were.
Yeah, I was very dramatic. But I'm saying like even like it's like despite being so physically uncomfortable, I was still happy to be with you.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you ever really annoyed me or anything.
Well, that's
like,
good.
Like if anything, I think it was like during those times I realized that I can actually really rely on you. And I think it was more than just relying. I think James really taught me how to be a lot more chill with things. Whenever I saw James, he was almost always happy or content with how things were. And I just rarely ever saw him get upset. And I was like, damn, I want to be like that. Like, who doesn't? So one thing he said to me that really stuck was whenever you're having a hard time, just ask yourself, where am I and what am I doing? So, for example, when we were in Bali and it was super hot and humid, and I was getting really frustrated because we had no AC and I couldn't even go swimming because I had thrush, I would ask myself that question, where am I? I'm on a holiday in Bali with the person I really like, and what am I doing? I'm just here to relax. Like I'm just here to have a good time. So yeah, I think when you think of it that way, it's just like a gentle reminder that things aren't that bad, and it's not to disregard how you're feeling, but it really brings you back in perspective and it allows you to be more present, which is something I realize that I struggle with quite a bit, because I think whenever I'm going through a hard time and things are shit, I would always either imagine the past or the future to escape it almost. Like I would think, oh, this was so much better in the past, or I wasn't this kind of person in the past, or if it's the future, I would think, oh, if I'm just in this different place, then things would be better. But the thing is that the only thing that really exists is the present. Like the past isn't happening right now and the future hasn't happened yet. So yeah, I think it's really important to be able to recognize when you're trying to escape the present, when it's really all we have. And it's in that present moment where we can choose how we feel. So thank you, James, for being really patient with me when I was being a whiny baby in Bali.
Yeah, it only took you 6 months to realize that you could rely on me.
Yeah, well, takes time.
Yeah, but like I really enjoyed pretty much everything about that trip.
Do you have any like best moments or highlights?
Snorkeling. We went snorkeling at the statues that time. I had a great
Yeah,
time.
the statues are quite cool,
Yeah.
except for all the other tourists there. It's lame.
Yeah, I know, but you just hate.
I just hate
If you could
people.
like go to a place where there
And
wasn't a
erase
single person.
everyone.
Yeah, but also when we were at the Gili Islands and it
Fire on me.
was empty, you would also say that you didn't
Oh.
like it.
Okay, I think I just didn't like the Gili Islands too much.
Okay. But yeah, that was like one of my favorite memories. And I think driving around Ubud with you on the back of my on the moped, like driving through, like going to the waterfalls and like through the tropical jungle and stuff.
Yeah, that was quite enjoyable. So for me, there was nothing really about Bali that impressed me too much, but what stood out to me from that trip was how well, I guess how,
You got
like,
this, girl.
thanks, how, I think how well we managed to like spend time together and also apart. What's the word for that?
Spending time together.
Oh, giving
but
like yeah, we're really good at giving each other space.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because I think like when you're with one person all the time, sometimes it can feel like, oh, you're just spending all your time together. But I think we're really good at like, I think we would do things together, but when we come home, we're really good at like finding our own things to do.
Yeah. But that was like really, like that got a lot easier when we went to the villa, because like there was a lot more room to do our own stuff.
Yeah.
We kind of like had a routine going.
Yeah, but I feel like even before the villa, like it was, like I never had an issue with that. Whereas I think in the past or just in relationships in general, I that was like a huge problem for me, like knowing like how much time to spend together and like apart doing your own thing.
Yeah.
So like, even like when you went snorkeling and stuff, like I was happy to not go.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I think, yeah, we were just like really good at that.
Well, there is kind of like, I suppose like when we first started like spending a lot of time together, it felt almost like I should be spending all my time with you. You know, but it's like it took me a little while to kind of realize, well, no, you don't need to, and it's probably healthy not to.
Yeah,
you know, so.
Yeah, you need your yeah, it's just like nice when you do spend some time apart, because when you come back together, you have something new
to share.
To share, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, was there any times you got bored of listening to me?
No, I think like even when you went off to play D&D and stuff. Like,
hey, telling the whole world that.
Well, I thought you were proud of it.
I am proud of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, I was like pretty excited for when you like would come back and tell me, like, or you know, your adventures and shit like that.
Yeah, I know, all that nerd stuff.
All that nerd stuff. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for someone who doesn't want to be a nerd or doesn't see themselves as a nerd, you certainly do date a lot of nerds and like listening about all their nerdy activities.
I think it's cute.
I think there's like some hidden nerd within you that wants to do all these things. Well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
So, you've got anything else to add? Oh yes, another thing.
Oh God.
Caterpie. So Caterpie is also another special guest.
Oh yeah, Caterpie. He's been Caterpie's a bit of a stalker. He's been sneaking around, listening in, watching us intently, as he always does.
Likes watching us.
He does. And somehow he always finds himself in between Tanya's breasts. And it pisses me off to no end. But, you know.
Well, it's just nice and cozy in there and he likes it.
Yeah, I've kind of accepted that Caterpie is just a little naughty boy. And, yeah.
Yeah. I would really like to thank Caterpie for being with us throughout the whole trip. I think he really helped me get through some hard times. Yeah,
when Tanya, like we had our connecting flight in Berlin, but Tanya stayed an extra week in Berlin. And that was like the longest time we had been apart. So over the course of 7 months, I don't think we spent 24 hours apart.
No, which is insane.
Which is pretty which is pretty insane. So
Yeah.
for a week, we spent like actually apart, and that was like really tough.
What was the toughest part for you?
I don't know. It's like always, like I kept finding myself turning, like in bed or like at the dinner table to kind of look at you and kind of like make
There's
sure
a
that
spider on your ear.
I know, yeah.
Wait.
No,
Oh
it's fine.
God. Okay.
Make sure that like you were laughing at my jokes and stuff.
Make sure you.
Yeah, make sure. Yeah, exactly. I needed to like kind of run them by you, test them out. But then you wouldn't be there, and it was kind of like, oh, like I'd always find myself kind of looking for you, catch myself.
That's very sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say the same. Like, I think like towards the end of the 24 hours, I really felt like something was missing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like looking around, like, oh, where's James?
Yeah. But I gave Tanya Caterpie to hold on to in Berlin, and how was that? How was Caterpie? Did he help?
Yeah, I think it was really nice because I think I haven't had someone like Caterpie.
Yeah, he's not an itch.
Sorry, someone like Caterpie to comfort me in a long time since I was like I guess a child, you know. And I think everyone should have a Caterpie.
A Caterpie?
Yeah, because at first I thought it was like, why would you buy Caterpie? Like,
well, you know, Caterpie is part of the Pokemon franchise, and you keep telling me that Pokemon's for nerds, but you love Caterpie almost, if not more than me.
I know. I don't like Pokemon, but I like Caterpie.
I don't know if that's true anymore. I think you're lying. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we've been talking for a long enough time.
Yeah.
Right? So
too long.
Yeah, this podcast is gonna like it's kind of like ending on a sad note for me. It's like we've got like 2 more days together.
Yeah.
Right? And then kind of this relationship is kind of coming to its natural conclusion. Which I think is, for me, it's kind of really bittersweet because, I don't know, it's kind of circumstance dragging us apart and not our own flaws, you know, and bitterness, you know. So this is always going to be something beautiful.
Yeah.
This 6 months, like, I think it's for me, my first love and my first relationship. You know, there's no bad memories to tarnish it, if you know what I mean.
Well, I don't think bad memories necessarily tarnish things, but you know, it's that's nice, James. oh, James. Yeah. And yeah, I think, for me, even though it's not my first relationship, like I feel like I learned a lot. In the sense that I think I was very arrogant at the beginning, thinking that like I can decide what is a real relationship.
Yeah, you felt like you knew more than me.
Yes.
Yeah. Which you did, but you didn't have to be such a dick about it.
Yeah, no, it was very eye-opening because I think like I don't know if it's okay to say, but when I met you, I was like, oh, you're the perfect candidate, like, to be, like that person to be with, because I knew I wasn't going to fall in love with you.
Yeah, well, joke's on you.
Yeah, joke's on me. It's another spider on you.
They're congregating.
Yeah, and I guess, like, the biggest thing I learned is just, like, you can get along with people who are very different from you, and that's
you can love people who are very different than you.
Yeah, and I think that's been nice.
Yeah, well, I definitely feel like I've grown a lot more mature, and like understand relationships a lot more, and yeah, I'm just so glad that I've met you.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
I'm glad I met you too. Oh,
Bleh.
all right, well, I think that's...
Yo, this podcast
Yeah.
was meant to be talking about our first season, but we ended just spouting. It was like relationship therapy for us. But I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's been fun to listen to for whoever's listening.
Yep. And on that note,
We'll end it there.
goodbye, yes.
Goodbye.